You're on, by the way.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! Hello. Scott Santens is back in the nerd zone. I should give people a warning right up front that the internet connectivity is a little bit spotty. We're not sure if it's the San Francisco fires or the New Orleans storms, but it's not working 100%, but we're going to make it work.
It's stormy out today, and we've had some recent issues with the hurricane. And so
yeah, well, we'll press on. First of all, I have to compliment you on your gorgeous Nerds for Humanity t-shirt. So you're looking very spiffy, Mr. Santens. I should have been wearing my own merch. Yeah. Well, let's catch up, man. Like, we haven't talked in a while. I mean, obviously yesterday was a big day. There was the march. You want to start there and then we can talk about other stuff as well?
so yeah, yesterday was the second annual Basic Income March Day. Annual count was 46 cities around the world. I think it was like 20 something in between US and globally, but yeah, it was a lot of different places and some great, you know, we've gotten some like local news, like TV station coverage of it. That's even just so far. We'll see what happens. I think we might even get more on Monday. Here, it was great. Like in New Orleans, it was very rainy, and we were already feeling a little bit of the rain bands from Beta, and we continued on instead of canceling. That maybe, you know, like 10 or 15 or something people would show up. We think we got more like 40 or 50 or something, I would say. And so I was just really excited to see that, you know, so many people cared enough about basically the terrible weather. And yeah, we just did some marching and had a couple speakers. Carl Whitaker spoke, and also our Louisiana Senate candidate Antoine Pierce come down and you know, just march with the people. And you know, he's to replace our current Senate candidate.
Yeah, we had Antoine on the show before, a great guy, and so hopefully he makes it over to the finish line. One thing I've noticed, Scott, is before during the first COVID stimulus plan, there seemed to be a lot of interest in discussing basic income as an alternative to, you know, corporate subsidies or very elaborate kind of loan programs. Lately, I haven't heard as much, and I'm wondering, like, why do you think, like, how do we get more momentum here? I mean, it seems like if there were ever a time where direct cash relief would make sense, it's a time like now. But I'm not hearing congressional representatives or senators talk much about it.
Yeah, at this point, like, we're just hoping to get a second stimulus payment up too, because I mean, both sides agree on a second stimulus payment. It's like the only thing they do agree on, can't pass something. And it was people's sales to see them, not be able to do anything. It's just kind of worsened by the fact that Trump issued some executive orders to go around that, garbage executive orders where they don't actually, do what they say that, all right, that's kind of like handled after all, even though Congress didn't do anything. And that's not at all. People are still just hurting. They're not getting anything. It's been, what is it? Like 6 or 7 weeks since the $600 boost expired, and was for less than that, and it has not even been implemented in like half the states. And we just need that. We need a second stimulus payment. And I still think for that to happen prior to the election. Like it was positive to see the Problem Solver Caucus, which is a bipartisan 25 Democrats, propose a compromise bill of one skinny bill and the bill the Democrats are pushing for. And that was, that's, I think, that bipartisan actually work together to make this happen. But it wasn't a compromise. It was good enough for the Democratic leaders. And so they're not really pushing ride this out as a electoral win for them, blaming the Republican thing, that they can ride this out as a win, blaming Democrats. So who knows? So Trump has mentioned too that he wants to use $300 billion, and here, I don't know how serious he is about that. He just said that like once, but yeah. As we get towards election day, I just don't see how people are just getting worse and worse off, and evictions are happening, and it's just so politics. It's like they don't care like how bad people are doing because they can blame. So at this point, and I think that a Biden win this will be move forward a bit and actually like pass some kind of recurring stimulus where we could actually build some real support and because I don't think obviously it's no kind of emergency based income is happening this term.
Scott, unfortunately, our internet connection is so difficult that people are only hearing about 40% of what you're saying. I think unless there's an alternate connection, we may have to reschedule. Only because I really appreciate your insights and I want people to hear all of what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing else that my end. I guess we'll just have to reschedule.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man. I know you took time out on your Sunday and we, kind of had this planned for a while. Hopefully, maybe this is another case for the importance of infrastructure.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? Let me ask you one more question.
On my end.
Yeah, people are saying that my audio is smooth, but yours might not be. So I think the California infrastructure is holding up at the moment. It may be that East Coast storm that really took you guys out for a challenge. But before we wrap up, and we'll have a longer conversation, hopefully in the near future. Let me just ask you, Scott, are there things coming up that people can do to try and have more impact so that we can keep this flame burning, or ideally, even grow the kind of momentum for basic income? Because I sense we've lost a little bit of it, and you're in the center of it. So I want to know, what can people do today or in the next few weeks to pitch in?
I still just suggest that the way to divest kind of infrastructure when it comes to basic income is, utilizing income movement, their tools. So, go to .com, and I know people have, I'm sure of, or hopefully people have already utilized those tools. If you already have, do it again. It just needs to be a constant thing of legislators, no matter how ignored that you feel, and just get the word out, and it's just encouraging other people to do the same thing. And I think that, and you're getting worse. I mean, you have to have that out there. You have to say, look, like, we can actually out here, and you can push for it. And the more people that do that, then that happen, because nothing's going to happen if you're not doing anything. So, I mean, anybody start off asking that question: what can I do? And just whatever that answer is for you. Reach out to representatives, share on social media, have real conversations with your family and friends. And actually, one of the things too, try to reach out to your mayor, because the Mayors for Guaranteed Income coalition is like a new get my mayor on board here in New Orleans. Was that reach out to your mayor? For me, I asked the question, like, who do I know that might, and that's how I was able to make that happen. So, just because you don't have a contact to your mayor doesn't, and just try to figure that out, and just make sure that your own mayor knows that and that there's that potential to run some kind of basic income pilot in your own city for mayors that sign up on board. Then that shows this building momentum and pressure to do.
Scott, some folks in the chat are very bummed that we have to reschedule, and they want us to try one more time to troubleshoot, just to brainstorm. Do you have a mobile phone with a separate like data plan that doesn't use your home plan?
I mean, is to try plugging in manually to but I don't know where cable is, and
Yeah, no, I got you.
spend,
And your mobile
15
phone,
minutes
yeah, your mobile, you could you could
something.
join from the phone itself. Have you tried? Would you want to
No,
give that, or
my mobile phone doesn't have
you say your mobile phone doesn't have wireless data? Is that what you said?
as a hotspot for my computer.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not suggesting you use your mobile hotspot for your computer. I'm saying join directly from the phone.
Um, I mean, I guess I can try that, but
I have done interviews with people on their phone. It works okay. I mean, ideally,
Yeah.
if you can have earbuds into the phone, and then just click on the studio link that I DM'd you on Twitter. You want to give that a shot before we wrap it up, or what do you think?
I can try it.
You sound super excited. Give it a shot. It may not be as bad as you think. I've done a few interviews with people on their mobile phone, like we did.
I hate using my phone like this way, but all right, I'll give it a shot.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it, man. I know everybody in the chat's looking forward to one college try, the final college try on this. We'll see if the phone works. If it doesn't, we'll reschedule. Oh, that is your credit card. I think the key thing will be the phone shouldn't be connected to your home Wi-Fi, because we know your home Wi-Fi is a little spotty. So you'll want to use just the, oh, look at this. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, dude, this is amazing. The audio quality is like 1,000 times better. All right, I think we should keep the interview going then. So we had talked about how we just have to keep applying pressure. And then you mentioned in your last answer, I heard part of it about working with the mayors. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do these mayors pay for the basic income? Where are they going to get the money?
Well, so Jack Dorsey provided like some money for the Mayors for a Guaranteed Coalition, and he's also been, I think, doing a couple individual cities too. And actually, I was impressed to see. I think it was St. Paul. Maybe is the one that they're actually using some CARES Act money.
Hmm.
And so that's like kind of opens the door saying, hey, there possibly might be some funds you can use here, or, it's like just because cities are harder up, especially if they get some kind of kind of bailout money for the cities in various the packages, then, what's the best way to use that? Well, maybe it's to actually provide direct cash assistance and show that this is something that's really effective, especially right now.
Yeah. So when you spoke, you mentioned that you talked to your own mayor. Mm-hmm. What were kind of the objections you were hearing, and how did that conversation go?
Yeah. So like I said, if it wasn't, I don't know how much it was heard or broken up, but
you may have to repeat your answer, because the original answer we really didn't hear.
The way that I reached out to my own mayor was, I thought, okay, I don't know my mayor, and I don't know someone who knows my mayor, but maybe I know someone who knows someone who knows my mayor. Mm-hmm. And that's what that worked. I did know someone that knew someone who knew my mayor. So then I went through them, got the introduction to someone in her office, and made sure that he knew about the new Mayors for Guaranteed Income Coalition. And I said, well, I think that New Orleans is a great place, to do a pilot. And I pitched like my idea for a pilot here, focused on something that hasn't really been focused on before. And he was interested, and he put together like a presentation and pitched that to the mayor, and then she liked it. So I wasn't part of, I still haven't met my mayor personally or spoken to her personally. It's been through her advisor. But so I can't say how she thought about this, but we did go back and forth as far as the advisor goes, and he actually, I didn't have to convince him of anything. I just wanted to make sure that he knew the various possibly supportive reasonings and stuff to share with the mayor to make sure that she was on board. So I don't even know like how difficult it technically was, and if there were like objections that went back and forth. But it was really just making sure that I got what I felt was necessary to him that he could get to her. And so I think it's really, it shows that sure, I have somewhat of a larger influence, I guess, but at the same time, I don't like, I'm really just like a normal person here in New Orleans. It's not like anybody gives me any extra weight or anything. I was just able to go through a connection that was able to help with that. So I think that should encourage people to think, okay, who do I know that could know someone who could know somebody? And if you go through that, it's possible to actually get something to your mayor, to at least make sure that your mayor knows that option exists.
And in general, what is your take on these sort of city pilots that are being led by mayors? Do you think this is the best way forward versus trying to get something at the federal level, or how do you think about what you're seeing so far?
I mean, obviously, the big thing and the thing that we're fighting for is the national UBI. It's not that these cities are somehow able to like do citywide UBIs and actually like cover everybody. It's more just about showing that there is support for this. And so, this is something that city councils can do too, that I would encourage every city council to. Even if you can't pass basic income as a city, what you can do is say, we vote to show our support for this idea. And if you have, 1,000 city councils that have voted in support of basic income, and you've got, 1,000 mayors that are in support of basic income, then it really does make a difference. And also, mayors have actually more, leverage. They have connections to people with influence. So the more people with influence that you get on board, then they're influencing other people of influence, and that's how you get like the gears going. So as an example, Nancy Pelosi recently, a few months ago, talked about guaranteed income for the first time and how it was like maybe something that we need to do, and she never talked about that before, and that happened right after. We as the income movement pushed for like a whole like day-long day of action with everybody contacting their representatives on like the same day. And like I would say that I don't think Nancy started talking about guaranteed income after that because there was like a lot of little people reaching out to their representatives. I think it was a matter of we were able to reach some of the people who have her ear, and then they spoke to her. And so that's what we're trying to do, is like you're trying to find those levers that actually make things happen. And I think that as far as the mayor's coalition goes, that's something with leverage, and that's something where you get enough mayors on board, stuff starts to happen. So yeah, I think it's not so much about these like great ways of getting basic income at the city level. Anything like that is going to be really just a demonstration. Just like the point of Stockton was always just a demonstration. That's even, it's in the name, the seed demo. It's about getting these stories and showing what like a big difference that it makes, at the individual level. And so, yeah, you're not showing like the universal impact, which is really important. But that universal impact is really difficult to show. Like you actually have to have full-on communities, full-on cities, full-on states. And so this is more about like showing, okay, look at what this did, like in Jackson for Black single mothers. And how much of a difference did that make to them and their families? And so like Jackson is really powerful, I think, experiment as far as those examples go. And I also recommend that people watch the documentary that actually includes a little about that, called Inherent Good, and that just came out. That was put together, it was made by Trey Crowder. And if you go to Inherent Good, the website, I think it's inherentgood.com, but you go to the website, you can watch that movie right now. Temporarily, it's open to like everybody and free, so you can do that right now. And then again, I can't remember when it expires where you can't do that anymore. So definitely try to do that when you can. And it covers like the Jackson stuff, and there's some great stories in there from that. But yeah, that's what we need to do, is to tell more of those stories. And it's just a really powerful way to do that, city by city by city, in different ways.
Last time, or one of the last times you were on here, we talked about some previous studies about the impact of basic income, like in Africa. And I'm wondering if there have been any new data that have come in to kind of unlock kind of more insights about how basic income can work, or where it needs to be kind of fine-tuned. Any new research that you've come across that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, there's always new research. And so I always recommend, so if people want like ongoing research, check out my ongoing pinned Twitter thread. And so every time there's like a new piece, I try to make sure to add that to this ongoing list. But one of the more recent things is, this is actually directly related to COVID. And this was because the Give Directly experiment is already going on in Kenya, that they were able to look at this and show the impact of basic income on like the resilience of these people in times of disaster, in a way that like no one else could, because the experiment was already ongoing. So you're able to see, all right, there's the control group and the experimental group prior to the pandemic. What happened to both of them as a result of the pandemic? And it showed that it really makes a big difference as far as food security was a big one. So there was a big difference in food security in the basic income group. And another result from that I thought was interesting was that I think because people were healthier, since we always talk about all the time as basic income advocates, we know that people are healthier as a result of basic income, that hospitalization rates go down, that people don't need to utilize healthcare as much as they usually would because they're healthier. And so in this instance, it made clear that, hey, you actually utilized hospitals less, in which case in this kind of disaster, where you're like trying to flatten the curve and avoid surpassing your hospital capacity, that it was actually really helpful in this instance by keeping those hospital rooms clear, thanks to healthier people, so that you could actually treat people in a way that you're less able to do if more and more people are sick. So I think those are two interesting results that Give Direct was able to show from their experiment.
Yeah, I just put a link to that pinned post in the chat for folks who are interested in learning more. You do have a whole load of studies in that pinned tweet. So let me just actually share my screen briefly. I know it's going to be hard for you to see, but since it's your own post.
Yeah, you gotta click like expand thread a few times, just to get through all of it. Yeah.
So here, like, here's the pinned tweet. So you go to @ScottSantens on Twitter, and it's this, and you go to his profile, and it's his first tweet because it's pinned. And basically, if you scroll down here, I mean, it's from 2018. You're adding kind of new stuff continuously. This might be like the Wikipedia for basic income research here.
Yeah, so the goal at the time when I did it, there was already a bunch of stuff, and I just wanted to make sure that it was all like listed in like in one thread,
Yeah.
and it was only data based. So it's not like a thread I add to if it's not like evidentiary. It's purely focused on the data. And so if there's like some kind of result or finding or whatever, then that's where it goes.
Yeah. Love it. As you've been following this for so many years, have there been studies or research that you've come across where it's kind of changed your thinking about basic income, where you're like, oh, that's the kind of nuance I didn't know 2 years ago that I know today?
I think one of the more surprising findings, and I guess surprising, it was surprising as in it's not something that I gave a lot of thought to, and it was something maybe that I hoped, and to see that it was from the Finland experiment, and it was that the Finland experiment showed that trust increased. And so they looked at even 3 different areas of trust. So they looked at trust in politicians, and trust in I think it was legal institutions, and trust in society at large and each other. And trust increased across all those. And it's actually, I mentioned that in my speech yesterday as being like this important, not so obvious effect of basic income, because it's really just, it's not obvious. you don't really think off the top of your head that, okay, we need basic income because it increases trust. But I would argue right now that I think that's one of the most important reasons why we need it, because we're seeing this like just massive failure of trust. And I think that's part of like this crisis, is like we're in this crisis of trust where you're not trusting institutions, you're not trusting media, you're not trusting experts, and you're not trusting each other. So in this like crisis of trust, like that's where you get like the birth of like QAnon. It's like really fertile ground for these conspiracy theories and delusions, because people are, you're just like, you're trying to find some way of explaining the world around you in a way that like gives you some kind of power that you can like explain. If you can explain something, then you're less likely to be like stressing out about it, because you think, all right, I got this whole thing solved and I'm like the only one who knows it, and I can't trust anybody else, but this makes sense to me. And that's when you get, anti-vaxxing and just like all this other stuff that's really bad for society. And so I'm worried about society right now in this like massive loss of trust. And so like, if you think about it, it makes logical sense why basic income increases trust, because you could even describe basic income as really being a foundation of unconditional trust. I wrote about this in an article, my Think Like a Martian article. It goes into like basic income as trust. And it's that way because what you're doing is you're saying, like, right now, we don't trust each other. Everything is conditional. Like, I don't trust you with the resources that you need to pay for housing and food and whatever else, because if I just give you this unconditionally, then what are you going to do? Like, you're going to waste it. You're going to use it on drugs. You're going to just do nothing but play video games all day and play. Well, I work hard, and that's like pisses people off to think about, because like we all just like think horrible things about each other as far as laziness and irresponsibility and inability to buy stuff that they need and make smart decisions. And so that, I think, is kind of like it's like a feedback cycle where, if you're distrusted, then you are going to not trust other people. And then what arises out of that is just more distrust. But if you start from this foundation of trust and you're saying, I trust you with this amount of resources that you need to live. You don't need to do anything in return because I believe in you. I believe that you will use this in the same ways I would, that you would pay for food and housing and education and for your kids, and that they'll do like incredible things with it that I couldn't think of, that you're going to be more creative than I am. You know what your needs are more than I do. If you start off with that, then you actually trust each other. And if you feel that the government trusts you in the same way, like if you're getting a check from the government and there's no strings attached, there's no work requirements attached, and it's cash that you can use on anything, then you're like, hey, the government cares about me. And of course, the government is all of us. So, you're looking at that as saying, well, everybody actually cares about me. The government cares about me. Politicians actually trust me. And that's how you're able to create this more positive cycle of trust. And so, yeah, I was really interested in that result because that was the first time I'd seen like trust being increased, and the researchers even asking and looking into that and actually showing that positive difference. And like at this point now, I think it's just really important, even more so than I did, prior to March, because it just seems that this lack of trust is just making things a lot worse than they otherwise would be. Like I'm worried about what happens when we create a vaccine and like the vaccine is available. If without trust in society, are people going to get those vaccines, or are they going to be like the anti-vaxxers and say, no, I don't trust this. This is like some Bill Gates thing, and there's like microchips that are nanoscopic and they're inside the vaccine and they're going to track me. Like all this like complete and utter garbage, but that happens out of this lack of trust. So yeah, I just think that it's really important that we focus on actually rebuilding trust. And if we just start off that way, if we just start off trusting each other, then we can actually do that.
Yeah, that reminds me, when I first moved to Switzerland a few years ago and had to engage with the government, and I had to go to the DMV, and I dreaded it because I was like, oh my God, this is just going to be a freaking disaster. Like, I don't speak fluent German, and I need to like do all this complicated car registration stuff. And I went there, and it literally only took about 8 minutes from in the door to out the door and having all my work done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, like government can work. Like they can actually get something done. And I wonder if part of like, if you got a basic income check, it would be like, oh, like we can actually get something done. And because right now, when you look at government today, it's just a long litany of things that we can't get done. Like we can't agree on what to do about Supreme Court justice. We can't even balance a budget. We can't even, like, sometimes we have to shut our government down because we can't keep the lights on. And basic income could be one of those things where you're like, you know what, like the American government can do some things. And here's an example. And, of course, it benefits the citizens as well. So I think that's a great point, especially now with trust in government being so low that it could, to your point, impact government's ability to protect public health even. And
these things build too. So, it is that positive feedback loop where if you're able to show the government works, and if you feel the government trusts you, then you trust government more. And so, you're maybe more likely to say, I'll pay more taxes for this other service, that's not cash. Like maybe we're talking about universal healthcare. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's something like, hey, government can work, it can do things, and so I'm going to trust it enough to run a single payer system in a way that maybe I wouldn't have before. Like you have to show that government works, and people have to believe that government works in order for this project called self-government to work.
A question from the audience: have you seen anyone talk about either political action committees or any kind of pro-UBI ad campaigns to increase awareness?
Yeah, so there's a couple things being worked on in the background where there is going to be kind of a big ad campaign here coming out soon. I can't really say more than that, but I definitely think that when it's released, you'll see it, you'll know it, and I hope that you share it, because it has the potential to really make a difference the more people see it. And then there's also kind of more of a lobbying possible campaign going on in the background that we're working on, as far as really like doing something in an organized way to again pull those levers in Congress. Be it the actual members of Congress. So it's getting members on Congress on board. That's the ultimate goal. I mean, in order to pass something, but also in order to make that happen, then who are the people around them and the people that they listen to that you can reach and get on board, so that they help get the Congress people on board. And so yeah, that's requires a lot of organization, and hopefully it's something that will get going soon.
And I know we're running short on time. I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, Scott, you've been observing, sometimes consulting congressional candidates, for office. Any thoughts on what you've learned from that experience, or advice for future candidates that are trying to run on a basic income platform?
Advice to those who are running on basic income. Gosh, I don't know. Like, there's I would like to say that maybe it's helpful to have like some kind of detailed plan, but at the same time, I don't know if that's helpful. And maybe it's actually politically, strategically helpful to not have a detailed plan, because it seems to like I don't know how important the details are to voters for members of Congress. Like, maybe the most important thing is just to show that basic income is part of your platform, it's important to you, and just avoid the detailed questions. Like, I look at that, and I'm kind of thinking that way just because of what happened in when it came to Charles Booker and Mike Breuer. Like, Mike Breuer's team, we had a very detailed plan, and if anybody asked Mike, how he was going to fund it and the details of this, he could just point right to it and say, "Here you go." Like, these are full-on details. And Charles Booker never gave any kind of details at all, and I think he had a lot of support, at least among progressives who support UBI for that. And I think that if you don't have those details, then you can, people can imprint what they want you to believe on it. So, there's that argument in, like, especially in the progressives and Yang, it's like, oh, it's a Trojan horse, and Yang wants to like destroy the safety net, and oh, he's got an opt-in thing because he hates people on welfare and all this crap. And but he got that because he had a detailed plan, and people could look at this and say, oh, well, if you're opting out, then people aren't going to be as good off as what they could otherwise be. So I don't like your plan, and you're a terrible UBI advocate, and it's not even UBI, and all this other crap. But if you just say, hey, I have UBI on my platform, it's really important, then they can think, this guy's a smart guy, and he's going to do this the same way I want to do this, or a smart woman. And so, if you can just project what it is that you want onto that. So maybe that's the smarter way to do it. I don't know. Personally,
it's so sad. It's so sad that we have to go that route,
Yeah. I mean, I'm a details guy. I really, I want to be able to answer explicit questions in details. But when it comes to like your average voter, I just don't know if that's really all that important. And maybe it even works better to have all those details. But I do think that it is important that you do run hard on it. Don't just be like a, hey, I think basic income is a good idea. Be like, hey, basic income was a really important foundational idea. We need to reduce poverty. We need to reduce insecurity. We need to, especially here in this environment, make sure that people aren't being evicted from their homes, that people aren't standing in food banks, that they're buying food from stores just like everybody else, that we actually prevent these loss of businesses by maintaining consumer spending. Like run hard on it and point out like all the importances of it. But yeah, when it comes to details, maybe that's just not as important.
Yeah, I think that's the reality of the way politics works now, where in some cases, if you give a lot of detail, it gives your opponents or naysayers things to kind of criticize you on. And then if your opponent is not giving a lot of detail, then they're kind of Teflon. But it's so anti-nerd. It's like, what do you mean no details? Like,
yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I know we're over time. I do want to thank you for coming back on the show. You've been on multiple times, and I always learn something when you're in the nerd zone, and I think the audience loves you. So I appreciate you also being flexible with our technology choices halfway through the interview. Any final words before we wrap up?
I guess, yeah, just like to encourage people again to because it's a limited time, watch that Inherent Good documentary. I was impressed by it. It was great seeing the focus that it had on like the Jackson experiment in particular, and also I thought it was really cool how it also showed the story of what's happening to people who don't have a basic income. And so like it was very like contrasting to see that people living in poverty, in working poverty too, they have jobs and they're just not making it by, and like kind of that like suffering and misery, and then like how different it is to see people with basic income and then they're like actually able to accomplish things that are important to them, that they're able to buy a house for the first time, that they're able to go to school and get better jobs. And it's just that's what we can have, like we can have that for everybody. Like we can go from where we are right now, where people are just, especially right now, getting more and more depressed and facing eviction and just living very stressed out lives and just looking at anything and anyone for possible hope and answers and stuff, to this actual society that can work. So yeah, just recommend checking out Inherent Good while you can, because it's only free and available to everyone for a while. And besides that, just thanks to everyone who showed up to part of the Basic Income March yesterday. Again, that was it was our second one, but it was bigger than the first year, and hopefully we can actually make it real next year under a Biden presidency, potentially, if it all depends on what happens with this crisis, what happens at the end of this year as far as the election goes, and after the election towards inauguration, and what happens as far as the remaining long-term after effects of the economic results of the coronavirus crisis. We really could be looking at conditions where we actually could really build up the possibility for at least some kind of temporary basic income, at least as a result. And I think if we can win that, then I think that it'll just be that much more inevitable that we can show how much of a difference that monthly unconditional payments make in so many different ways. So keep your hopes up. Don't let the kind of lack of congressional movement get you down, just keep on fighting. Just reaching out to your mayor, reaching out to other people, just trying to do what you can, because that's all any of us can do, is try to figure out what it is that we ourselves can do to make a difference, and focus on that.
It is not a crazy scenario to think of a President Biden with a cabinet member Yang trying to figure out how to steer this country through a very long, difficult recovery, and asking themselves, like, well, maybe we should do more direct cash support. And then history books later saying, believe it or not, the coronavirus crisis was terrible, but one good thing that came out of it was it sort of caused a chain of reactions, including the introduction of cash relief, which then 6 or 12 months later, people were like, well, this thing's actually working really good. And even when the economy is better,
right,
maybe we don't cut it off. And then we'll be back in the Nerd Zone talking about how you predicted all of this, Scott.
Yep. That's really the goal. Like you can think of it as 3 stages where, the getting that stimulus check was a big win. That really helped a lot, and people, felt what it was like to get that $1,200 check. And then if we get a second one, then it's like, hey, this felt great too. This is very useful. These multiple checks things works really well. And if we can get 6 months next, maybe like the first half of 2021, with like monthly checks for 6 months, like I really do think that could be like the final blow to make sure people are like, hey, we're not losing this. This is working. And hey, if you want to win midterms, then make this happen, because this is suddenly much more of an important issue to me, than it was before. And I will elect people and hire or fire them based on whether they keep those checks coming or not.
I love it. I like that plan. I like midterm being like a key milestone where we're like, if you're voting again, if you're voting to cancel this direct cash assistance, like, you don't have our support. I love it. Well, Scott, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And really appreciate you coming on again. With that, I'm going to say goodbye, nerds.
Thanks, Tom. Sorry for the technical issues.
No worries, brother. I need to hear a goodbye, nerds from you, Scott.
All right, goodbye.